Hello, world. It's Melanie and the Trillium ladies here. We're all getting together for another group chat. And today our topic is going to be on authenticity. Christina thought it might have been about freedom, and I love both of those words, so let's go with it. Freedom and authenticity. So say hello, Krystal, then Randi, then Christina, and we'll dive in.
Hello, world. I'm Krystal, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today about being our authentic selves.
I'm Randi. Happy to be with you. Can't wait.
Hi, Christina. Excited about this topic as well. As we were just discussing, we really don't prepare when we're talking. We kind of just come together, and which is wonderful because it's great for me because I feel like I sometimes can over prepare and get into my head. And so it's really nice to just come and trust with whatever comes out being raw, vulnerable, and authentic. So I'm excited about this topic.
Me too. I think pretty much in every phase of my life, I thought I was the most authentic version of myself that I've ever been. But now that I'm 40, I'm like, I really feel more authentic now than ever. And I look back on the previous versions of me, and I just barely recognized that person. So it's funny because at this age now, I wonder, like, the future me in 10 and 20 years, am I going to think this version of me wasn't very authentic? I don't know, but I'm certainly listening to my own thoughts and desires and communicating that better than I used to, wearing whatever I want and going after the job that I want. So I do certainly feel more authentic. What about you guys? Do you guys feel like you're more authentic today than ever, or do you think you have more to go?
I think that first, when you started to talk about that, Melanie, I thought about myself years ago, and when I felt that I was being the most authentic version of myself, I was absolutely the happiest version of myself. And I think there are many times where I felt I needed to be something other than my authentic self, and it really wasn't a very happy time of my life. So I currently am in a really good place, and I'm feeling very much more authentic now than I have been. But I think it also can go in waves in our lifetime. So I appreciate the knowledge that I have and everything that I have been through to get, to today, all the experiences that I've had. And that is kind of what I pull from when I think about, or make a decision about something that I want to do. Is it really speaking to me and my truest self? Then I know I'm being authentic and that I'm the happiest.
Nice.
I think what Krystal said too resonates with me, that authenticity for me is a moment by moment. So it will change in the future what the authentic me is compared to now, based upon how I shift as a person and expand in consciousness. I think to be authentic is to be truthful about who you are and honor that in each moment. And I think when you're honoring it, if you do feel that joy inside, if you do know you're following your own heart, your own passion, your things, and you'll feel it. I don't know if I can say this is my authentic self, it's this, and label it out because I don't really know until each moment what that is. I know if I have to think about it and think, oh, how should I respond so this person will like me? How should I do this? Then that would be my inauthentic self. Whereas my authentic self is just me. This is who I am. Take it or leave it, like me or not. This is who I am. And I think you can feel that with certain people. Like, even people would say, oh, she's kind of intense, or she's kind of this. Like, if it's authentic to her, you love that person for that authenticity. Mm-hmm. Even if their personality may be even completely opposite of yours, you love that she shows up authentically. And I don't even, again, know how you feel that or know it, but you do. You know when people are faking with you or when they're showing up authentic. And we know you're faking yourself or when you're showing up authentic in a moment by moment situation. So
yeah, I think that's part of the reason why we all connect, because we're at the place where, like, I can't not live from the most authentic self that I am. We slip back into the programs, or we slip back into we get thrown off by things that might trigger us. And I think it's interesting because we represent, you know, kind of an age spectrum here, with the youngest ones being close to 40. I'm going to be 58. I mean, I'm almost 60. And, you know, there's a lot of, so there's just subtle differences in the ages of our children, and kind of, and I think back in my 20s, and I was on a spiritual path in my 20s. I was, you know, on an Eastern path, and you know, seeking really my whole life. If I'm really honest, even as a young kid, I was really, you know, seeking God in, and it was more in animals and nature and things. So, but then you get into the world, and there were times where I thought I was living kind of my authentic self, but when I look back, I think, you know, I was very much affected by the thoughts of others, the judgments of others, and there was so much looking outside of myself. So I'm super grateful for the experiences, and see all of it as part of that kind of gathering back of myself to be the most authentic I can be in this moment, which, as you said, Randi, that's going to fluctuate, and I'm sure there's more to come. The joy of the journey of knowing that it's a work in progress, and just kind of doing the best you can in the moment, and being kind if you're having a moment where you feel like you're not. I mean, there's no judgment in it. And so I
It was
think
awesome.
It's almost like we're born into this. Oh, go ahead. Oh, it's almost like we're born into this world, and like we're conditioned to fit in. We're conditioned to be accepted. And we do that, I think, from a base level of survival. Like, you know, as a child, you don't want to be outcast. Like, your survival depends on it. So it's so funny because the first several years of our lives, we're trying so hard to fit in and accommodate. And then it seems like if you awaken and grow up, hopefully you can start tapping into like who you authentically are. And that is, it's felt on an energetic level. Like, that person is beautiful. It's not the traditional line them all up to all the beauty queens look exactly the same. But it's like this beautiful like blossoming of each person. And we see it in artists a lot, especially like musicians. They're doing their own thing, and we're like, oh, we love them. And I think it's because there's a part of us that's like, yeah, you can express yourself too. Randi?
Do you feel that as you were growing up and you were talking about fitting in and such, as we all try to do, but do you feel that you gravitated more towards those people that were being their more authentic self? Because that just came to mind for me. Was I felt the most joy and the happiest around others who were being their authentic selves, or versions that I thought were authentic of them. I don't know how you all feel about that.
I completely agree. I don't think I would have articulated it that way back then, but
Right.
I could kind of see, I didn't put myself, I tried the best to avoid situations that were really uncomfortable for me, like the bar scene or doing something out of peer pressure. I kind of didn't really fit in any particular. I was a smart kid, I was athletic, and I did kind of, you know, playful too, but I wasn't in any particular group. I was kind of on my own, and so I always had like one friend that was like my authentic, connected friend, versus, you know, being kind of pulled into all that. So I think I really did appreciate a real connection, and not, you know, people that were themselves. And I had a lot of friends that were I think we're trying to really figure out who we are, and so it's mirrored in other people. So I was drawn to people that were kind of out there and bold and confident and all of that, because I was very quiet and shy and less secure within myself. And so I saw that and I appreciated it. And I was talking with my room full of young 20-something-year-olds just about that yesterday, about authenticity and connection and relationship, and having those conversations with them now is so incredible, because they can save years of going on this tangent or this path that could, sure, it's learning, and if that's what they're going to do, that's great, but if they can understand that now on some level, they really can become their authentic selves at this time when it's really important, versus getting distracted or sidetracked.
I think too, like if you grew up in really strict programs in family or religion or whatever, it's like you don't really know what authentic self is because you are never given permission to explore that. You're told this is what good people do and follow that path. And so it's interesting. I grew up Mormon, and all my friends were Mormon pretty much when I moved to Utah in 7th grade and beyond. And so we were all trying to fit in the same box. And so I think we thought we were authentic because the programming was so deep that you think that's who you are. And you never stop to question if it's who you really are or not, because to question that would be too much cognitive dissonance. And so people just accept that this is who I am, this is my authentic self, but not really ever even exploring any other boxes or outside of boxes, right? We're just like, here's your box, this is all you know, so this is who you are. And it's interesting going outside of that box and then considering your perspective. I was just talking to a gal yesterday doing some coaching, and she was also raised Mormon, and she's 44 years old now, and she's like, I really wanted to do my hair in dreadlocks, so I finally did. She's like, I'm going to see my family, and I'm so concerned about what they'll think about me, and if they won't like me, if they won't like it, and she's like, I don't want to upset people. And I'm like, wow, we're talking pretty enlightened conversation. I'm like, it's so interesting that at 44 years old, because those boxes were so small, we're still literally concerned about what our parents will think about our hairstyle. Like, and that shows that level of the control of others, and what their perception is of us. But she's like, but I did it anyways because I'm being authentic. And so that was her practicing that authenticity, regardless of what anybody else thinks. And I think the more we practice that, the easier it is, until I eventually just show up and like, I don't really care what the fuck you think of me. This is who I am, and to get to that level of authenticity isn't easy, because I think in any situation we're still, at least I still, I think, I love to show up authentic, but I know there's times where I still show up as a pleaser for others instead of just fully my authentic self. And maybe that's not the wrong thing. I don't know. I just know that I notice that I do that. But with you guys, like my friends, people who I resonate with, I feel like I should get to show up as authentic me. And that's when I feel the most joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm still not my authentic self. I put this shirt on because I was like, I don't know if I want to wear a tank top.
Right? It's like deep
so
programming.
silly. Like, what do I care? Isn't it?
Yeah.
And like, so on a soul level, we're all like extremely unique. Do you think our soul is always like pulling us to express itself authentically? Like similar to the blueprint we get from our hologenetic blueprint, or like our astrology at the time and date that we're born with the location that contains a lot of information. Do you think it's our task here on life is to discover like what our soul is trying to pull us to do?
I think that it's definitely our task is to come back to remembering ourselves and who we were at that time, as we were chosen, or as we chose to get into the womb and to be in that family, in that setting, and constantly coming back to remember that. And I think that that's where there's so much conflict in people's lives, is society doesn't necessarily foster that. We go back to the molds, and we go back to who we should or should not be, and where we should show up and how we should show up. And so when we talk about freedom, or we talk about authenticity, it's that journey of remembering who we were at that time, of conception or of birth into this reality.
Mm-hmm. And I think it feels best to be your authentic self. It feels best within, and that's really the way that I'm attempting to live my life now, is from that, like make decisions from that. I love the quote by David White, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken." And it's true. It's like, we are so often, and myself especially when I was younger, so worried about, I'm nice. Am I being nice? Am I being this? Am I being good? Am I serving enough? Or all of that. And that's all fine and good, but it's not always real. And there's a dissonance within when I'm not being myself. And the pain of that is far greater than anything else. And so I try to just express, like, I wanted to get rainbow hair on my last birthday. So I love the
I'm
rainbow
so
hair.
proud of you. That's
It's
so cool.
fun. And just, and that's a small thing, but it's fun, like, to just what makes your soul feel alive, or sing, or want to sing or dance, or and you can't always be in every single moment. Well, maybe you can, but sometimes there are life things that you have to take care of. But that's kind of my barometer of how decisions now. If one of you suggests getting together, there's no hesitancy. I'm on a plane and I'm in Salt Lake, I'm in Utah, or I'm in Arizona, or it's just, we just do it. I don't think about it, go over analyze, and well, I've taken a lot of days off, and oh, this plane flight's going to be a lot because it's a last minute flight. It's like, no, you just say yes and you go, and it's going to be amazing, and you don't worry about it. And that's, so more and more, that's how I've been living my life, especially this year. And it is, speaking of freedom, it's a super freeing feeling, instead of thinking so much and trying to analyze so much. So I'm really enjoying being more free.
Trust and surrender.
I think it is very liberating to live in the moment and realize that we're expressing ourselves, our authenticity, in different ways in each moment. Because, there's some moments where I may be dancing and being crazy, and that is an expression of myself. There's also moments where I'm very serious, or moments where I'm very sad, or moments where I'm this. So we're all expressing, I think, different levels of our different aspects of our consciousness in each experience that we're having. And I think allowing all those aspects to be expressed in those appropriate moments is very healthy. I think if you try to hold in things, and because we should or we shouldn't, or whatever, in some situations, yeah, you might need to tone it back, because there's certain things. I'm sure times we want to say something, we're like, well, I can't say that in this setting. But, but maybe we go home and scream it in the pillow because it pissed us off. And we have to still express that energy in some way. Or maybe when we express love, or we express joy, or we express our excitement, those are anytime we're literally expressing our truth, that's being authentic. And it can look completely different depending on the situations, but that's all aspects of us that want expression when it's appropriate for them to express.
What do you guys think of people that criticize that? They say, oh, you're so different now. Like, I barely recognize you. I mean, that feels kind of like a slight, but part of me is like, thank God I'm not the same person, So what do you guys say to that? Why is there so much resistance? I mean, it's sort of a rhetorical question. We're being programmed from every angle, right? But yeah, what do you guys think about that, the resistance out there?
Well, it's most likely coming from people who aren't in touch with their authentic selves in a frequent, in a regular, day in and day. They might touch onto it, but haven't had the awareness to even contemplate this subject. This video might be just a conversation starter for some people. I didn't know, when I was hanging out with my bold friends in their 20s who were doing these things, and I would think, wow, like, I couldn't do that. Like, oh my gosh, I'm too shy to do that, or whatever. And I think about it, and it's like they were being their authentic self, and that's what I appreciated. It didn't have so much to do maybe with exactly what they did, but it was that I saw that, and I hung to that, and now I can look back and reflect on things. And like Krystal said, I think that in life, when that I most, well, I lost my train of thought, but I think being authentic and witnessing that in other people is when I'm the most myself. And I just try to have compassion for those that aren't there, because they're just on their journey at the point where they are, which is perfect for them. And so some people I've had to literally distance myself from, knowing that it's probably just hopefully it's just a temporary time frame while they kind of work through what they're working through, and we can maybe come back in connection. But some people I've had to kind of distance myself from, because it's just I don't need an attack, like, for being who I am. I don't need that, and
Yeah.
I don't want to fight. So
You're just not the same person you were before, so
Yeah.
you don't connect in the same way. Yeah, I
Right.
don't.
It's just different resonance, different. It's the reason, season, lifetime. Or just
I think
cause. There's no judgment about it, I guess.
it's a really difficult thing to go through, and personally, that's been happening to me. And on the flip side, I see myself growing in different ways, and others staying where they're at. And like you said, it's perfectly fine. But when that's kind of in our face, and they throw up that question to us, like you said, Melanie, they say, what is it that you said, that you've really changed, you're not yourself, or you're not who you used to be. I think that they're operating from a lot of fear, because that makes them question, well, why are you changing? What's going on with you? When in reality, they should be kind of looking at themselves about whatever's showing up for them in their lives at the time. They looked to us, or to you, or to each other as friends and as individuals for support in those ways. And they still get the support, but it comes in a very different way. And I think that that's fear that's creeping in for them, and something for them to look at.
That's true. So what do you guys say about, like, what's happening on a bigger scale? Like, why are we not encouraged to be authentic from school, from religion? We've got advertising, marketing telling us we're not good enough. I mean, why do you think every aspect of our society, it seems, is not really celebrating us to discover ourselves? What do you think's going on? I mean, I know you guys know geopolitically what's happening. Yeah. Is there some agenda to control us, or what do you guys think's going on?
I think that when we're in a program, we're easy to control. We're easy to understand what we're going to do. We give our power away to somebody else, so we become we have no power within. Anytime we put the power outside of ourselves to a program, to a God, to a whatever. And so I think the idea is to keep people trapped in those programs of not being good enough, that, you're not worthy unless God judges you as worthy. You're not worthy unless your clothes are good enough. You're not worthy unless you're good enough at this or that or whatever. It keeps everybody stuck in a program that makes them easy to control, because they know once people bring back their own power, they literally can change the universe. By holding that power from the inside. So that's scary to the program, to the matrix, you might say. Anybody busting out with that much energy and that much free will and that much willpower, you would say, can disrupt the system. And they don't like system disruptors. It's very similar to like the movie The Matrix. And everybody will fight to keep you in some sort of program, because that keeps you less powerful.
In relationship to authenticity, it strips you completely of that authenticity. And if one really sits and questions, am I truly happy, with myself about what I'm doing and where I'm at? They'll probably recognize that they're not really that happy, because they aren't able to be their authentic self. They have to be within the confines of that program, or the construct of looking a certain way and being a certain way and such.
Well, like poor kids going to school these days, like that programming, it's like, well, you have to be smart enough, you have to be able to do this, you have to do that, or you're not good enough. And how many kids really aren't really made for school, but they can do amazing stuff with their hands, or these programs can be really detrimental to some people if if they don't think, well, maybe it's okay that I'm different because that's the authentic me and I can pursue that path. But kids aren't given the option to pursue that authentic path. They're
Right.
just say, here's school, this is what you do, this is your program, and we'll tell you how to live, think, whatever. It's just sad.
Mm-hmm.
I think our ego is a program. I mean, we obviously need an ego to carry about in this reality. We got to have a name and a personality and all that. Is our goal to kind of maybe not release the ego, but acknowledge it? Like, how do we maintain the ego and step into a more authentic version of ourselves? Does that even make sense?
I think that makes sense because I see the ego as like perspectives. I think our ego is taking all of our different experiences and saying, this is my perspective on the situation. This is my perspective. This is my perspective. And we're doing this so fast within our minds, we don't even realize we're doing it. But then we come to our own conclusion based upon seeing all these perspectives. So I think people you call well-rounded people or open-minded people or that, they don't really come to those judgments that quickly. They'll listen to all the perspectives of all the egos and then bring it to a space that makes sense for them. And that's hard. Sometimes the more perspectives you have to consider, you may not fully know what authentic self is, except our feeling on it. And that's where we have to go back to feeling based upon, and not necessarily, examining every perspective, because those type of people that are really in their mind have a really hard time making any decision because they're listening to every single perspective, every voice of the ego, and they might contradict each other. But when you take it to the heart, you have that inner knowing, and it kind of brings it all from the mind to the heart, and it makes that connection. And I think that's where you really find that authentic self,
Mm-hmm.
is by listening to the ego, but also by listening to the whole heart.
Yeah. It's an expression, like we are each part of a collective consciousness, but we have unique vibrational expression of who we are, solely independent to, like there's no one else who's going to think and express and give to the consciousness in the way that I can or you can. And it's the more I see that, the more be that, the more I'm contributing to the whole and helping the whole by self. So it's that back to the self, serving the same. It's really I don't think there's any way you can go wrong by honoring and being fully who you are and expressing completely who you are.
I think that the ego is important, and that it helps us to kind of recognize the programs. It helps us to understand. And when you are operating or making decisions from that ego perspective, a lot of people aren't able to recognize that that's what they're doing. And I think one great guide in knowing that is to sit and just say, how does my body feel right now? Maybe my stomach is just in knots, or maybe there's something going on physically, like in my back or my throat or my head or whatever it might be, and sit with that feeling and kind of breathe into it and feel the vibration of that part of you. And I think this is really useful whenever you're in conflict, or you are trying to make a decision on something, or someone's really pushed your buttons and, pissed you off, quite frankly. And you think of your reaction to that. Am I operating from my authentic self, which would have compassion, which would bring joy to the situation, even though it's very difficult to do? That's when you can really sit and recognize, okay, my ego side would have this perspective of it, and this perspective of it, and this side and that side, and looking at it from every angle. But my true authentic self, wow, for a minute, I hit that spot and, oh, everything softened, that feeling in my gut kind of went away, and that whatever emotion or whatever physical feeling that you have might subside. And that's when you're coming back to that authentic self and stepping away from that ego self, but appreciating the ego for what it can teach you and remind you again to come back to that authenticity and how good it feels.
It does.
So
And it
I
seems
would
like all the
say though
great,
too, is it possible that the ego is the authentic self? Because it is all those perspectives. And then we're just choosing which one we're going to say respond with like someone pissed you off. Maybe sometimes the lion wants to respond and maybe sometimes the lamb wants to respond. And maybe both are authentic. You know, it's just a matter of, is it appropriate right now for the lion to respond, or is it more appropriate for the lamb to respond? And should I hold back, or should I fully express this emotion? And so I don't know if it's necessarily one is more authentic than the other, even though we might say this is the best way to respond, because sometimes I think people need to call out shit for what it is and not hold back. I don't know. This is just some thoughts I had, because I feel like I'm being most authentic when I don't sit with it too long, where I just allow myself to express what I feel I really want to express. If I feel like I'm bursting inside with something and it's not expressing, then I'm pulling it back and I'm making that choice from ego. But the ego can also be that lamb that says, oh, don't speak up, don't talk, you'll just make a scene, blah, 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 because that's ego too. So I think we're just really deciding maybe which aspect of ego we are going to express. Just a thought.
I think it's also it's the individual's journey. I had many years where I needed to learn to speak up and express anger and all of that, because I was almost too nice or too kind or too this, but it wasn't allowing me to be. There were parts where I felt like I was, biting my tongue, or there was something percolating within that needed to be expressed. So it was, part of my journey was to learn to, cuss or be angry or be okay with that. Whereas there are other people that are maybe out of balance and they're learning to be more gentle and kind and soft. And it's just all back to what your particular journey is calling for in each moment. And it may fluctuate from moment to moment, from year to year, from relationship to relationship. And I think it's just important to not judge any of it or think I've backslid, or, we're so hard on ourselves. And it's really, like we've talked about many times, every single thing I've been through has been such an incredible lesson and teaching moment. And if you contemplate it, every moment, really almost every conversation, there's something in it if you really want to look at it. Not that we can go through the day every single thing, but there really is. I don't think there are mistakes. I really don't believe in the concept of mistakes or wrong actions. It's just learning and kind of going through playing something out that you particularly need to play out for some reason. And you may play it out multiple times because you don't get it, and then you finally get it and you go, oh, move on, what's next?
That's why I like that term, the higher self, because the higher self is a part of us that takes it all in, that knows everything. And that's why all the great teachers are always saying, you need to ground, you need to slow down, because that's when higher self can come in and be like, okay, you're a radio and you have access to many frequencies here with the various aspects of ego. So it helps you rise above all those options. And you're absolutely right, Randi, like select the most appropriate one at that time. What do you say to people that as they're awakening to kind of their own spirit and what's going on in the world, they're gonna, similar to the other question, they're becoming more authentic, but that also requires sometimes great sacrifices. So I know we want to keep encouraging them to slow down and tap into their higher self and be able to connect with that, but how do you advise people as they start hearing that voice when they discover, wow, I'm way off track? How do we help people kind of get back on track? I mean, if being our authentic self is so easy, more of us would do it.
I think going back to maybe what we said in our first discussion, I just remember talking about sitting and taking it easy on yourself and taking some time, whether it's 2 minutes or 3. And once you do sit with your self, and whether it's, crying or writing or whatever it might be, even sleeping. I think we beat ourselves up a lot about, oh, I just feel so tired and I shouldn't, and this and that. It's like, that's the best time for us to process and to grow, is to get that good sleep. I think that having those quiet times, and also finding, that balance where you can go off and take a crazy, workout class or something, and then come back to just being with yourself and taking it easy on yourself, literally taking it easy on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think too, go ahead, sorry. I was
going to ask another question.
Okay, let me finish this one and then go to the next one, because I wanted to say one thing about the higher self. I've kind of changed my verbiage on that to say my inner self, because I think we always think there's a higher power, there's a higher something, but really that's who we are. We are the higher self. We are the higher power. It's just if we're listening to all of the perspectives and considering all the possibilities that there could be, instead of just, going to one program that we've perceived to be truth for however long. But it's like opening our consciousness to new possibilities. And so I think the higher consciousness, or the higher inner consciousness, it's a higher is always a little tricky to me, because we think it as higher or above or whatever. Where if we think inner, it's like bringing all of those perspectives within for us to consider from. So that's one thing I talk about people, I don't want to listen to the higher self. Well, it's like, well, that's you. It's not like it's separate from you. It's you are a piece of the higher self, and the more you open up to all aspects of yourself, that is the true you. That is the authentic you. All of those aspects, instead of just the programs we're taught that are, well, this is who you should be, so that's the program you're going to play. It's like, no, I'm taking in all these perspectives within me, so it's my inner self. Just a thought.
Yeah, it's almost like another form of like self-hatred, because I always thought my higher self was like the best version of me, the person I know I should be, the person that like showered and did her hair, and it's like, you're absolutely right. Like, this version of me is real, and it's as real as my 6-year-old self or my 60-year-old self. So the next question I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think about using psychedelics to kind of become aware of your authentic self? Now, I'll admit I tried DMT, and I felt like I was able to completely separate from my ego. So it was a really fascinating experience. So now when people talk about ego, I absolutely know it's that like version I've created of me, because I feel like I was able to perceive something else during that trip. What do you guys think of people that want to experiment with that sort of thing to maybe understand themselves better? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I want to hear more from you, though, what your experience was of it, and what that felt like to be separate from the ego.
Okay, well, I felt like I was surrounded by love, and I felt like it's weird, you hold yourself up before you fall asleep. You don't relax. When you're falling asleep, you start to relax all your muscles. Well, it was almost like it induced me to a state of like letting this go, relaxing everything, but that includes my name, my voice, this body, everything, sort of taking all that and putting it on the shelf. And then some version of me is like observing that. And so that's the first initial feeling, like, oh my gosh, I'm not that version, that Melanie that I created. I'm something really a lot bigger. This is my awareness. But while I was under the DMT trip, I saw all kinds of colors and kaleidoscopes, and I think there were faces, and that was fascinating. And I'm still trying to figure out like who created that visual experience. And also the people, I was with, I felt like their thoughts were my thoughts. My voice was almost blended with their voice. Like I heard my own voice, but it was sort of a version of everyone else. And then when I came out of that phase, I just sort of opened my eyes and perceived reality as much more vibrant and colorful and storybook-like, just magical, almost like Disney, like all the paint, everything, like the Disney that we, like the fairy tale version of Disney. But the paint was perfect, and everything was just, like a TV show. Everything was just a little too perfect in my environment. And so that was my perception too. So it kind of makes you think, wow, my perception is malleable. Like I can have a variety of perceptions. So maybe I could perceive the room right now as this Disney Wonderland. Maybe I just don't quite know how to tap into that. So I don't know. That was kind of my experience.
Well, we hear so often how we use just a fraction of our mind and our consciousness. And, so many teachings talk about that. And, DMT is naturally produced within the pineal gland, which is the seat of awareness within our, and we're not taught any of this. We're not taught any of this in school. We're not taught the amazingness of our bodies and the abilities. And you can tap into different things. You can tap into things through certain practices and meditations and practices. And there are substances and natural, God-given substances that can help induce these states of connection. And I think that's beautiful. If it's done with that purity and intention to connect, I think you will likely have that experience. I think there are people that can come to an experience maybe more for just to have this experience or this high, and they're maybe coming in a little ill-prepared, and you hear stories of ayahuasca journeys where people have demons and things coming at them, or it can be really traumatic. And I think it's just it's the individual's choice, and I think it can be a really beautiful experience that can connect you, especially if that's your pure intention.
I found that DMT for me, when I was like in that vibration of like where you see the colors and the kaleidoscope look, and you feel like I felt like I could feel and hear all of the vibrations of creation. And it's like, and the fractals were pictures of those vibrations. And it was like, I felt almost like I was returning to a place of pure consciousness where all possibilities exist. And it also felt like at the same time, I never left that place. It's like, I felt like I was just like, oh yeah, I remember being here. This is where I am. It's such a weird feeling to, I don't even really know how to explain it, because it's just, you feel it and it's so familiar. But at the same time, you're like, why don't I ever remember this when I'm not on DMT? But when you're there, it's like, you've always been there. It's so strange to say that, but that's kind of the feeling I get. And you realize how much everything is in flux, how the energy is just constantly moving and flowing and in and out and exchanging. And then I could feel myself being birthed through different levels of my DNA and expressions of myself that are held within my DNA that I didn't even realize were there, but they all still came from this original stuff, whatever that energy was, that it's just expressing itself as, my consciousness projected as Randi, but I felt like it was like the consciousness of all kind of in this like machine-like movement, but it was just kind of like pure energy movement. And then I feel like on cannabis, I have an experience where I can hear all the different personalities, you might say, of the ego, and I can hear like this thought, and I can hear this thought, and I can hear them actually talking back and forth. And I think this is always going on in my head, but I'm never slowed down enough to like listen to the different sides. I just kind of play the one that comes out. I think that's what Krystal's talking about, is like sitting and kind of listening to that. And I think cannabis kind of slows me down a little bit to kind of listen to the different thoughts instead of just the one channel I'm used to going through, which I would consider the personality I typically express as Randi. That's my experience.
Do you think, yeah. So as we're talking about authenticity, do you think our unique soul goes like on a journey through multiple lifetimes, and that's like the authentic self we're trying to tap into, or is our authentic self the all that is?
Good question
on that.
Good question, Melanie.
I asked,
you come up with some dang good questions, girl.
I'm trying to figure it out. Like, my guess is our soul goes on a journey, and we probably take on several bodies in various forms for source to express itself through our eyes and our experience. So our authentic self, I'm just guessing, is probably our unique signature, our unique song. And then obviously it's always nice to tap into the fact that we are also part of everything and the all that is. So I don't know.
So I would say that it comes from what we desire to express. Because like you're saying, I think there's all these archetypal energies when you connect to the all. And I think that's what I can hear, like when in cannabis is the different archetypal perspectives of something. You know, oh, the joyful, happy person over here, and then the person that's like, no, I don't like this over here. And you're kind of listening to both and understanding. And it's like, well, what, you know, how do I feel about it? Based upon all of these perspectives that are us from past lives, from, well, really simultaneous lives, which is us really, I think, tapping into different archetypal energies to expand our consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would like to make a comment about the use of the word desire, because so many paths, I've been on a few in my existence in this body, and we're taught to be free from desire, and it's really often comes across as a negative that you should be free from desire. But I loved the quote from The Science of Getting Rich from Wallace Wattles, because it just hit me. And he basically said, desire is possibility seeking expression. And it's like,
love
yes. It's so
desire is
powerful,
possibility seeking expression. That is so cool.
and that's what you were saying, but there's nothing wrong with desire. Again, I call BS on that. They're trying to suppress us finding out who we are. So how can they do that? Don't have desire. It's bad. Don't do, there's so many good, bad, not right, not wrong, shame, all of that. And there's nothing wrong with desire. Desire is what makes you feel alive. And
Totally.
and speaks to that inner self that knows what it really wants. And if you really listen, it will answer. And I think it's just important to understand that is not, it's a beautiful word, a positive, beautiful word.
Totally agree.
I think that should be the topic of next week, the word desire.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Whole topic on desire.
I love it. Well, and I just opened this little book. I love tarot cards. I won't do this every time, I promise. But this is only a paragraph, and it's just perfect. It's embracing enthusiasm. And that's basically, it starts with desire. It says, shout to the heavens with happiness. Stop waiting on the sidelines to heal yourself and reach your goals. Get up and take some risks. Break a few rules. Shout to the heavens with joy and exuberance. Clap your hands with glee. Be silly. Don't hold back. Allow childlike wonder to flood your life. Take a day off work. Experience and celebrate even the smallest events of life. Discover what's great about each day. This is not the time to be reserved. Embrace every aspect of life. Smell the daisies. Good times are ahead if you just loosen up a bit. I think that's great.
Love that.
Follow your desires. And that is following your authentic self.
And I love how it says that childlike, because that's really what it is. Yeah. Children follow their desires in each moment. Mm-hmm. And they just express how they feel. And I think that there's so much power in that. And we shun them for it, and we shun ourselves for it sometimes, instead of allowing that to express and see how that feels. Just try it, practice it, see how it feels to let yourself authentically express. Again, like we used to when we were kids.
It's fun to play. And I just kind of a quick little story is I've been trying in my house because I have a lot of color in my house, and all my walls are either Venetian plaster or all this colors. And so I'm like, well, the only place in my house that has maybe some light background is my bathroom. So I'm literally in a bathtub right now.
It's a pretty
I'm literally in my bathtub. I'm like, does it look like I'm in my bathtub? And honestly, I don't care, because it is probably the best place to record. So I'm going to be in my bathtub. I'm like, I might have bubbles next time. Who knows?
Go for it. We should do that. A bath.
It's playful, and it's like, I don't have to be so professional and have a desk with professional. No, I'm thinking bathtub, and it's fun.
Yeah,
totally.
Very tough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Let's all pick a word, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And then next week we will talk about desire. So we'll get to ponder on that. So let me come up with the word. Authenticity. It's 111 right now. I'm just gonna use the word joy. because following your authentic self, at least following my authentic self, has always brought me joy. There's these short-term moments where maybe somebody says something and I might spin on that a little bit, or I might feel weird or like no one likes me, but there's just a deeper soul level joy that's going on, and you're always rewarded for being your authentic self, and people eventually will be drawn to you like a magnet, to the point where you're almost like, okay, get away. But it's just what happens when you become authentic. So it's a joyful thing. Go ahead, Krystal, then Christina, and then Randi.
All right. So my word is play. As you were reading that, Melanie, and I was just thinking about an experience recently for myself. My husband does not like to play games. And if I can get him to play a game, he becomes his most authentic self and just laughs and has more fun. But it's getting him to that point, to give himself permission, I think, to release. And so my word, I was reminded of that as you read that, is play. And I'm headed out on vacation. I'm going to do some more of that play.
Great. My word is comfort. And there are, not to open up a can of worms, but there are some geopolitical truths that are going to be coming out over the next several weeks, months. They're going to could be quite challenging for people. And I think it's really important to find things that bring you comfort so that you feel safe and secure through all this, knowing that things will work out well. And hug your cat, sit in your bathtub, snuggle up with your blanket, but be comfortable, and just find things that help you to feel safe, secure, snug, warm, hugged, and safe. I think that's going to be just really important. I think it can be really important as we move into these changes that we're going to be hearing about.
And we should look at the people that are triggered and sort of traumatized by these revelations and think of ways we can comfort them, as opposed to I told you so, which part of me really. Okay. Go ahead, Randi.
My word is express. I like that, as we were talking about it, to express yourself. I think that was a Madonna song or something, right? And just I think that goes with playful, allowing yourself to express yourself, all different aspects of yourself, and just do it in the moment that it wants to be expressed. I do find that the more I just express my fun, joyful, or even upset, angry self, that I feel like I'm being authentic. Whereas if I hold all that in, then it makes me want to explode. And especially with little things like anger, if you don't look at those and look at it, and it can be expressed gently. You can express in a way of, okay, what am I upset about? And just reflect it back to yourself and talk to yourself and understand it, instead of just burying that anger and saying, well, I'm not supposed to be angry, so let me just bury that. You can gently express it, look at it, be aware of it, and come to an understanding. That's going to ease that emotion. And so expression doesn't have to be explosion. Explosion happens when we aren't expressing, and then finally someone's given permission to let go, right? You can gently express in safe, productive ways, or in exciting, fun ways. There's not rules around it, but just make sure you're expressing and you're never burying those energies. Because it's when you bury them inside, you end up with dis-ease in your body and discomfort and disconnected. You end up disconnecting from yourself because it becomes so yucky inside that you disconnect from it, because you're never expressing those things that are yucky. And we're meant to express. Our bodies are given, literally to release. We're given ways to express those things out of our bodies, the good and the bad and the ugly. All need expression.
I think that's perfect. All right, well, that wraps us up for today. We'll go ahead and talk next week about desire. All right.
Desire. See you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.